I spoke with a former client last week who raised, the question. They wanted to know exactly, is everyone feeling like there's going to be a decline in giving?
Mm-hmm.
Not for a charitable client, that is their top of mind question. And I think for the CEO or executive director, that is their question, is when is giving going to drop off? If it hasn't already. What I heard from that leader was that things are flat. I think they perhaps expected that they would be down, but they were flat. And so for organizations that have been in a growth trajectory, I suspect from what I'm hearing that the general consensus is that they've stayed relatively flat rather than growing in this most recent quarter. And then for other organizations, they have seen a drop off in giving, not as dramatic as they expected. I think worst case scenario was on everyone's minds at the end of last year, but what we're hearing is that it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. So that is one kind of trend. The other trend that we have seen is the drop off of a lot of that lower level giving. So those monthly donors. And I know we've been looking at this with organizations for a number of years. So either refreshing and renewing their monthly donor program and really working on the value proposition for that monthly donor program. And then there's been a rise in major giving. So where giving has stayed flat or gone up, it is that gap is actually being met by major gifts. And so and those are precarious because you may not get one next year. And if that, if you're in business, they call it a guerrilla client. You might call it a guerrilla donor. Not in the warfare phrase, but in the zoo phrase. And
Don't have Walmart as your only client. Is that?
yeah, don't have Walmart as your only client, because if they drop off, you're in trouble. And so I think that charities are navigating what that looks like. I think the third trend is almost being numb to some of this because, and I get that. I really get that. Leaders didn't get into this for the problem solving of it. They got into it because they cared about the mission. And so I think can be that compassion fatigue and a bit of a numbness. And I think also we're seeing these trends to younger people engaging in the church, in the Bible, in ways that we've never seen in my lifetime, at least. And I think that there's this idea of unfortunately, what I hear is how do we get them as donors? And that's actually not what I would lead with. I would say, how do we engage the right community, and how do we capture the hearts of those who would really care about what we do and are younger? And so I think those are big buckets, but those are some significant trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, and obviously from our perspective, we see it on the talent side. We're seeing what I've described as the largest leadership transition that the sector has faced in decades, and that is definitely having, I say trickle down effect, but in the sense it's a major issue, right? We've got boomer leaders who have been in place for many years who are leaving the marketplace. We have boomer board leaders who are leaving the marketplace, and we have boomer major gift donors who are leaving the marketplace. It's not a perfect storm in many respects, right? And yet we do want to attract that next generation of talent. We want to attract that next generation of donor. Yet at the same time, there's a lot of influences on the market that are, some of it's out of our control, but some of it is in our control. And you and I have talked about this a little bit from a succession planning perspective. Certainly, 15 or 20 years ago, we didn't do succession planning very well. So we're missing, I would say, a chunk of talent from the Gen X generation. And our leaders are really going to come out of that top end of the millennial group, at least for the next season, for sure.
Yeah.
Or need to. And if we lose them from there, we're in trouble. So you're seeing it on the donor side. We see it a bit on the talent side. And yet, the trending information around giving, it's tending, as you said, to be kind of that older major donor. And as they leave the marketplace, that's going to leave a number of organizations in a certain amount of limbo when it comes to their bottom line.